Hello and welcome to this week's episode where I'm rejoined by a well-loved guest on the podcast, namely Dave Seminara, who is a writer, journalist, YouTuber, and the author of Mad Traveller, one of my favourite travel books I've ever read. So Dave, welcome back to the show. How are you doing?
James, thank you so much for having me again. I'm doing well. How are you, my friend?
Yep, not too bad, thanks. Not too bad. We're going to talk about Suriname today, which is a country I've not talked about in the podcast. So this is a different one for me because I know literally nothing about it. So it's going to be a lot of questions coming your way. And it's about your trip for 8 to 9 days last year, I think, right? Or this year?
Was there in
Yeah.
February.
Yeah. So just to remind the listeners where you're based and how you've been as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm doing well, traveling as much as I can afford, as always, writing about all of my adventures, vlogging about them on my YouTube channel. I am based in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida, and all of the elderly snowbirds, or at least most of them, have now gone. This is a wonderful time of year here. It's late April,
Yeah.
and usually between Christmas and Easter is complete chaos here. We have all kinds of tourists and snowbirds here. They mostly are gone by now, and so it's getting nice and quiet here. And hotter, though, unfortunately.
Yeah. Do people vacate the summer to the northern part of the country just to escape the heat?
Oh, they absolutely do. So we've
Mm.
got a very large snowbird population here that they live here, the lucky ones, the lucky people who are here 6 or 8 months per year and who have some other wonderful place to flee to
Yeah.
in the summertime, the lucky ones. Now, me, on the other hand, I just plan one big international trip every summer where we try to buzz out of here for as long as I can afford.
Yeah. You said that on the last podcast, I think, when we talked about Latvia and
Yep,
Estonia and Lithuania. I think you said that you
yep. And
plan,
Finland, yeah.
yep, you plan like a big trip in the summer just to get away and take
Yeah,
the family, right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So last summer was Japan. 2 summers ago was the three Baltic countries plus Finland. Every summer we go somewhere, and my children's country collection is growing and growing.
Yeah.
But I also enjoy taking the individual solo trips too, and that's what I did. I buzzed off from the family in February for 8 days in Suriname. And by the way, you pronounced it very well too,
Oh,
because the way Surinamers pronounce it.
yeah.
I'm not going to do it very well, but they add like an extra vowel onto the end of it. It's really interesting. I
Oh,
wish I wish I could replicate it well, but they kind of say like Suriname, Suriname, kind of
uh-huh.
like that. It's interesting.
Okay. Well, let's dive straight into it because
Ah,
why not? What made you, first of all, want to go there? And was there someone who told you, do you know what, you got to go there, or was it on your radar? How
yeah.
did that come about?
Yeah. Yeah, there were two people who told me I had to go there. And believe me, it doesn't take much, you know. I could get a half a person to tell me a place is good and I'm booking a ticket. I actually had two people to tell me to go to Suriname, which was like, damn, I got to get out there. So, in a former life before I was a writer and YouTuber, I was in the U.S. Foreign Service. I worked at American embassies in different countries. And one of my Foreign Service buddies actually has been working at the embassy in Suriname for almost 4 years now.
Hmm.
And he's been telling me, man, you got to get down here. He's lived in a lot of different countries around the world. And he told me his favorite post of his entire career, he's been in the Foreign Service for 20 years now, has Suriname. So that's
Wow.
saying something when a
Wow.
guy who's lived in a lot of different countries, this is his favorite post. So
Yeah.
he's been telling me to go. Then I know all of these, I know almost all of the world's most traveled people because of
Hmm.
my book, Mad Travelers, which you kindly plugged at the beginning of this. It's my most recent book. I've written four of them, but that book, is about the world's most traveled people and how they got conned by William Bakelin, who was one of your countrymen. I got to remind you of that. Anyways, one of the people that I interviewed for that book told me that traveling along the Upper Suriname River was one of the most interesting trips she's ever taken in her life. And she told me that it is the only place in the Americas where you can feel like you were in sub-Saharan Africa. And I said, what? I got to do that. I want to know
Yeah.
exactly what trip you're talking about. And I'm replicating that baby. And that was what I did. That was the first thing I did in Suriname was replicate the trip that this woman, who, by the way, she's the first Filipino woman to travel to every country in the world.
Hmm.
And so this is someone, when somebody who's been everywhere is telling me this is a special place, that means something more to me.
Sure.
So those two people.
And if you think about South America as a whole, it's a country alongside probably Guyana and French Guiana that I know French Guiana is not technically a country, but they kind of get left behind, right? With the
Yeah.
big hitters beside them. Yeah.
Let's tell people where it is because
Yeah.
most of my friends, when I told them I was in Suriname, they think that's in Asia or they have no idea where the hell that's located. So this country used to be called Dutch Guiana, right? So it's sandwiched in between Guyana, which was owned by you folks, the Brits, back in the day. It's now an independent country, right? And then on the other side, you got French Guiana, which chose to remain part of France. So that is still a department of France. So they use the euro there, and it is not an independent country. Not an independent country, but they do have a lot of sovereignty from France, and France sends them a lot of money. So that country is apparently quite well developed with its infrastructure. Apparently, you can actually even drink the tap water in French Guiana. But I've heard that Suriname is the most interesting of the three. And so that's why I chose Dutch Guyana for my trip. And it is a country of just over 600,000 people, but it's geographically, it's not tiny. It's a fairly large country geographically, but there's only 600,000 people living there. And it is a very pristine and untouched country. There's very few roads. Go ahead and look at Google Earth or look at Google Maps while you're listening to this or afterwards. You'll see there aren't a lot of roads in this country, but there are a lot of trees.
Yes, that reminds me, actually. I want to say that Dave has very kindly shared a link to this episode. So if you go into show notes and you're listening right now, click the link, and he's got some bookmarks on the country of Suriname, of where he wanted to go to and did go to. So you can follow along with the geography, because I know for a lot of people, this is a brand new country, a brand new concept, right? And it is for me as well. So that's in the show notes. Click that. And I've got some throwaway facts for Suriname, like its capital, Paramaribo, is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Official language is Dutch, but has many different cultures and is very ethnically diverse. Rainforest covers approximately 94% of the country. And as you said, the British next door colonized Guyana, but once colonized Suriname, but then swapped it with the Dutch for New Amsterdam, which we now know as New York. So just some quick facts there for the country.
Yes, and let's unpack a few of those, shall we? Because
yes, do it. Yeah.
There's some interesting stuff there. Now, on the face of it, maybe since I'm American, I'm a little biased. You might think, and people would laugh like, "Oh, what the Dutch? The Dutch did what? The Dutch traded what? They traded New York City for Suriname." But if you think about it, the Brits, you folks, lost America in the 17th, right? So you actually did not control New York for that long, whereas the Dutch controlled Suriname. Suriname did not get independence, I believe, until something like 1975. I wish I could Google it, but I don't want to bother Googling while we're talking. But for a very long time, and the Dutch ruled this country very cruelly, for the most part. I hope I don't offend any of your Dutch listeners, but for the most part, they ruled this country very, very cruelly, particularly up until 1863. Which was a turning point. 1863 was the year that the Netherlands abolished slavery. And so what happened was the demographic mix of this country is so interesting because after 1863, what the Dutch plantation owners did, for the most part, they didn't just, after slavery was abolished, they didn't just pack up their things and say, well, that's that then. Instead, they started importing indentured workers from other countries. And the descendants of those people still live in the country today. So what you've got is this super interesting ethnic, such a diverse country. For a country of only 600,000 people, it must be the most diverse small country in the world because you've got, first of all, you have what are called Maroons. We're going to talk about the Maroons a lot tonight because visiting the Maroon communities for me was the highlight of my trip. So the Maroons are the people who are the descendants of enslaved people who escaped the Dutch plantations, mostly in the 18th century, and fled into the forested interior, into the Amazon rainforest of the country. And the descendants of those people still have a very strong Maroon culture that exists to this day that you can experience. And there's 6 Maroon tribes, very interesting group of people. Then you also have the Afro-Caribbean peoples, which are called the Creoles. Yep. You have the Amerindians, which are the Native American, the original inhabitants of the country, the Amerindians. And then you have the groups of people who came, the descendants of people who were brought in after 1863 to work on the plantations. And the largest of those groups would be the Indonesians, which were mostly from the island of Java, okay? And Indians, okay, from the subcontinent of India. And to a lesser degree, Chinese and some other groups, right? And so that's why a lot of people say they call it the most Asian country outside Asia and the most African country outside Africa, which is super neat, I think.
That's an amazing mix of cultures there, isn't it? And they all live quite peacefully amongst each other, right, as well?
They do live peacefully amongst each other, and it contributes to what you experience as a traveler. It's not just something that you read on Wikipedia, but that diversity, you taste it in the food. So this is a country that has surprisingly awesome food. This
Okay.
was one of the great delights of my experience there is you've got the Caribbean influence. So you can have like great roti and stuff like this, right?
Oh wow.
You got
Yeah.
you got great Caribbean food. You have great Indian food. You have great Indonesian food, Chinese food. The mixture of all that stuff into their own unique Surinamese blend of it. I'm telling you, folks, Suriname is such an underrated food destination. If you go and look at some of the videos that I made on my YouTube channel, Mad Travel, you will see how delicious the food is. But if you want to dive deeper into the cuisine of Suriname, I strongly recommend to you another YouTuber. His name is David's Been Here, and he's specifically a food vlogger.
Yeah.
David's Been Here made a 3 hour long vlog about the food of Suriname.
Oh
And
wow.
when you see all the stuff he ate, you will be seriously impressed because the food is great and the people are great. That's the other thing too, is that, one of the videos that I made about Suriname, the title of it you'll see is I called it the world's friendliest country. And a few people tried to fact check me on that and
Oh,
dispute me and say, no, I think some other country is friendlier.
sure. Yeah,
I don't know. That could be true. This is all a very subjective thing.
it
But I
is.
will tell you, I have rarely been to a more friendly country than Suriname. So I absolutely love the people in this country.
And can I ask you about the people? This might be not a controversial question, but not a pushback, but just a question. In your article, which is coming out in July, you did mention that there are some villages along that 2-day excursion along the river where they don't accept white people. Is that true? And obviously we can understand why, but what's
This
your
is
thoughts on that?
that is, I think in the history of podcasting, that is the greatest transition and segue and follow-up question ever. That is such a great question because it seems very incongruous, doesn't it? I've just told you it's the friendliest place in the world, and you're pointing out that I mentioned in my article that there's a no white people allowed village. Great point. So that village you're talking about is called Dahomey.
Okay.
If you want to pin it on I think it's already on my Google map, but if you want to pin it, Dahomey, Dahomey. Do not go there if you're white, okay? No, seriously. The only reason that little tiny little village along the river is famous is because some YouTubers have gone there and have
Okay.
made some viral videos where they've interviewed villagers who said, "Don't come here if you're white," that sort of thing. But listen, that is just one village of maybe 100 or 200 people in the entire country. I traveled up and down that river, and if you look at the second video that I did from Suriname, which is my vlog about traveling along the Suriname River, I will let you judge for yourself whether the people there were friendly or not. I think if you watch my vlogs, you'll see that the people are very welcoming and friendly there. Now, what's up with that one village that's decided it doesn't want white people? I do not know, but I will tell you that is a great exception to the rule. And the other Maroon villages that I visited along the river, along with another village we could talk about later, maybe at the end, because I did this on the last day on my way to the airport.
Hmm.
I went to a village. I went to a village, James, called Santigron. Okay.
Okay.
That it specifically said in my guidebook, there's only one guidebook to Suriname, the Brat Guide to Suriname.
Yeah.
It specifically said that do not go there without a tour guide. And then if you go there without a guide, you may receive a frosty welcome from the natives. Well, once again, I went there anyways with no guide, and I cannot tell you how kind the people were to me there. And again, if you don't believe me, just go on my YouTube channel. I made a video about it. The headline is something like, I was told to avoid this village. I did not avoid it, and the people were amazing there.
Okay. I was playing devil's advocate, so and
No, it was a wonderful question.
okay, yeah, yeah, and also you can kind of accept why. Yeah, yeah. The history of colonization is a tough one, as we all know. It's another conversation for another podcast, I think. But you can understand why they're just bringing down that generational thinking of, do you know what? We don't need those type of people anymore. They caused heartbreak before. We don't want them here now. Totally get it. I'm going to move on to the preparation for your trip because I guess people are thinking, okay, yeah, I'm interested. But first of all, how on earth do you get there?
Well, okay, let's talk about flights getting into this place.
Yeah,
Now, first, I'm going to give you the bad news, and then I'll give you the good news.
yeah.
The bad news is there are not a lot of flights coming into this country. Now, if you are European, there's a daily flight from Amsterdam on KLM. So if you're coming from Europe, probably that's going to be your best option. Now, I'm not an expert on every flight route, but KLM's daily flight from Amsterdam nonstop to Paramaribo is going to probably be your best option if you're
Hmm.
coming from Europe. Now, from the US, not a lot of options. One of the options you have is there are some flights on Suriname Airways from Miami, but not many, and they're seasonal too. I think the much easier way to go is the way that I went, and also on an airline that I really like. Copa Airlines has a daily flight from Panama City, Panama to Paramaribo. And that is how I got there because I can fly from my home airport, which is Tampa. So I went Tampa to Panama City to Paramaribo. Now, the crazy thing about this country is their entire tourism strategy, and I have a little rant about this in one of my vlogs, is all based upon the Dutch, right? So literally every tourist I met in this place, and I didn't meet that many tourists, which is wonderful because it's not chock full of tourists, but all the tourists that I did meet, every single one of them was from the Netherlands. Their entire tourism strategy is based upon attracting Dutch tourists. And that's who you're going to meet if you're a traveler there. So as you go there as an American or as a Brit or as a Falkland Islander or wherever the hell you're from, if it's not from the Netherlands, and people will be interested to meet you.
That's good.
I think you get a nice welcome. So the good news is that it's not oversaturated with tourists. And I find in life that the most accessible places are rarely the best ones to visit. Like this
True.
is my kind of my rule of thumb, like with, for example, like Greek islands. Like for Greek islands, do you want to go to a Greek island that has a daily, like 3 daily nonstop flights from Ryanair? You probably don't, right? So it doesn't have great accessibility, but the reward is once you get there, you are not jostling for space with lots of other tourists.
And have you heard anything about the overland travel options? Can you go to the countries either side through there?
Yes, you can, but not without some hassles.
Okay.
It's not. I did not do it overland, as I said, but I've talked to other people who have, and you can come from Brazil, not so much. I believe somebody can fact check me on this, but now that is, you want to talk about remote wilderness where no one's living, the Suriname Brazil border. I do not think you can do that overland, or if you did, you'd be a hell of an adventure. You'd be very impressive.
Yeah.
And I'm not positive that land border crossing is even open because it's so remote there.
Yeah.
But from the other 2 Guyanas, yes, you can go overland. And it's time consuming, though, from what I've read.
Sure. Okay.
There are actually, too, if you want to do day trips, there is a day trip. Also, there's a lot of little travel agencies in Suriname. So if you'd like to also go to French Guiana while you're there, there are day trips there's a market town in French Guiana that's right over the border, and you can go there and you do not need a multiple entry visa because they don't stamp you out if you're only going into the border region, because Suriname, you do have to buy like an online visa, and for whatever reason they're single entry visas. So I was like, wait, how can you even do this? So if you want to come in and out of the country, like go further afield and then come back again, you've got to buy 2 of those single entry visas. But not if you take the day trip to French Guiana. So if you're a country collector and you also want to bag French Guiana, I did not do that, but there are day trips organized by tour operators where you can do that.
That's good to know. And what about like vaccinations? Do you get yellow fever maybe or anything like that?
Yellow fever is recommended, absolutely. And I already yellow fever's one of those nice ones where if you've had it one time in your life, you're set. And I got yellow fever, a vaccine like 20 years ago, and so that was all I needed. But they didn't ask me for it when I entered.
And
but you're supposed to have it.
Yeah, you get a little card, don't you? I got one in Australia.
Got a card.
I've lost my card, so I don't know what to do about that. Yeah.
Got a yellow card.
Yeah. I might have to get it again. Anyway.
And I did have it just in case.
What about the sort of like maybe currency situation? Because I keep thinking Dutch, maybe, is that an influence? But I guess it's not euro, right? So it must be another currency. Or US dollar, maybe?
Yeah, they do have their own currency. And gosh, I'm forgetting what the exchange rate is. But here's some more good news about Suriname, folks. It's very affordable. It's very affordable. Now, I'm not going to put it in the category of dirt cheap. It's not insanely cheap. It's not laughably cheap. But it is significantly, if you're American or European, it is significantly cheaper than what you are used to. I'll give you an example. You can go out for a very nice meal and really stuff yourself at like a mid-range type restaurant for like $8 or $10 US in that range.
Okay, decent. Yeah, take that. Okay, let's delve into the trip. So I guess you started in Paramaribo. I guess there's a lot to say about that. How did you find that city as a capital?
So I have mixed feelings about Paramaribo. I'll tell you something about this country. You do not go there for the city. So I'm not saying there's nothing to do there, nothing to see. It's worth a couple of days. But the real unique and incredible highlight of this country is the natural beauty of the jungle, which covers up most of the country. The animals, the rivers, the nature. So I would not budget a tremendous amount of time for the capital city. I would budget 1 or 2 days. There are some interesting things there that I will tell you that I like about the capital. A few things. First of all, it's one of those countries where it's only got one proper city, right?
Yeah.
They've got other places in the country that they call a city, but it's honestly the only proper city in the whole country. So everything emanates from there. All of the tour companies are based there. If you are a city person, I do not recommend this, but some people just stay only in the capital and they do day trips. There are a tremendous number of day trips you can take with different tour agencies that bring you back and forth to the capital. So if you're the kind of person that only likes to unpack their suitcase once, put their things, away in the closet and not pack back up again, you can do that. I don't recommend it, but if you like to travel like that, you can do that because you can get all around the country on day trips with these different tour companies back and forth from the capital. Another thing that I like about the capital is the food. There are a number of excellent markets, including a couple of ethnic markets that are open on the weekends that are like Sunday markets only. And unfortunately, I was not there on a Sunday, so I did not get to, but there's a lot of good restaurants in the country. And you're going to have the best selection of food and markets in the capital. There is also a very, very unique market, if you like unusual markets in the capital. It's called the Maroon Market. Some people call it the Witches Market, although I was told that's somewhat derogatory. But what you have there is mostly Maroon women who sell handicrafts, but also more interestingly, bush medicine.
Okay.
Unusual
Yeah.
herbal remedies and such.
Yeah.
Very interesting market. I highly recommend you go to the Maroon Market and be careful with your camera there. Not because it's going to be stolen, but because most of the women who work there do not like being photographed or videoed. I was lucky I found one woman who let me make a video about what she does, and she explained some of her herbal remedies.
Yeah.
But like even her friends, some of the other stall keepers were mad at her for letting me video, and were like cursing at her in their language. Which, by the way, the language, we should talk about the languages too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Let's do the languages. I imagine Dutch is prevalent, but they must speak Creole as well, I'd imagine.
I've got more great news for you. So since they have all these other different languages, I was shocked how many people speak English in this darn country.
Okay.
You and I are, Americans and Brits, we're kind of notorious for not knowing a lot of other languages. I went there. So first of all, they've got a language called Sranan Tongo, which is the lingua franca, right? Almost everybody speaks that language, right? They also speak Dutch, and Dutch is the major language that's the first language in the schools in the not in the Netherlands, so obviously in the Netherlands too, but also in Suriname, right?
Yeah.
So those are the first two languages that pretty much everybody speaks. A lot of the people also speak a third language, particularly the Maroons. Now the Maroons, as I said, there's 5 or 6 Maroon tribes, and they each have their own language too. So for example, I traveled amongst the Saramacans. So the Saramacans, their first language is Saramacan. Their second language is Sranan Tongo. Their third language is Dutch, but I was amazed. A lot of them speak a fourth language, and thank God that fourth language is English. And what impressed me was, in a lot of countries, some people will speak English, but it'll only be the very educated, the very top of the society, where like if you meet people who are making a 6-figure salary, they might speak English, but nobody else does. I was amazed that you can go to the market and talk to someone who's selling peppers or tomatoes, or someone who lives out in the countryside, and many of those people can communicate in English and actually also enjoy doing so. Because there's some people in the world, as you know, where like they're capable of speaking English, but they're pissed at you if you even approach them in English, or like they act snooty with you if like you talk English to them because they want to speak their language. I met a lot of people in Suriname who were delighted to practice their English, and because they don't get that much of a chance to do so, because you don't get American and British travelers there much.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that in your article, which is coming out soon, about the first sort of activity you did where you had a group of you and there's like 5 Dutch-speaking tourists and you're the only English-speaking tourist, and you sort of had your own personal guide. And so I'm thinking here that if you're English-speaking, this is a golden opportunity to go somewhere where it's quite rare you're going to get a nice little exclusive service where they don't mind speaking English to you, and it's not like frowned upon.
Yeah. Now the only downside is there are some museums, and again I ranted about this in one of my vlogs. There are some museums that are in Dutch only, where you walk into the darn museum and every darn thing is in Dutch, which is kind of sorry, but that's a little silly. Again, I hope I don't alienate all my Dutch fans because like I actually love the Netherlands. I made a lot of Dutch friends actually on this trip and in previous. So like I got nothing against the Netherlands, folks. Trust me, I love the Netherlands, but why in the hell would you, when you're in South America, even if, Dutch is your colonial language, why would you open up a museum and have it only in Dutch? Come on, folks.
Yeah,
Seriously.
it's interesting. Yeah, I do agree. Even though the Dutch is the closest language to English, right? Technically.
Is
Does
it?
that make sense? Yeah.
Doesn't seem like it when I hear them talking, believe me.
No, absolutely. Okay, so you left the capital city. So what was the first
Yeah.
big activity you had planned? I think you might have mentioned it already, but tell the listeners what you're thinking.
Yeah, so the Upper Suriname River Maroon Villages trip is what I started with. So I did a 3-day, 2-night excursion, and I was a little nervous going into this excursion, I have to be honest with you, because I looked at it. You go there, first of all, from the capital, you take about a 3-hour minibus ride to a forlorn little hamlet called Pokigron. And believe me, this place barely exists. Tiny little market, lots of flies and mosquitoes buzzing around, meats and things like that. A
Yeah.
few random guys drinking beer in the sun. There's like nothing going on in this village except for all of these big, beautiful dugout canoes that are launching from there. It's a bend in the river. It's a bend in the Upper Suriname River where all of these river journeys start from. And I looked at these boats and they don't have any covering. Picture a long sort of wooden dugout canoe. And I thought to myself, because I'm one of those people who like, I am an adventuresome traveler, but I'm thinking, all right, how long do I want to spend on those kind of boats? There's no bathroom. If you got to go to the bathroom, you're out of luck. It's one of those sorts of deals. So that's the first decision you have to make is if you're going on this voyage, which resort or hotel are you going to stay in and how far away is that place? Because one of the guidebooks I read recommended a place called Danpati, Danpaati. That is one of the nicest resorts supposedly on the river. But it's a 3-hour boat ride from Pokigron.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Right. And so I looked at those boats, pictures of them online, and I thought, 3 hours on one of those little boats with no pit stops, no bathroom, no covering from the shade. So if it rains, you're getting poured on.
Right.
No covering from the sun. And I thought, nah, I want to stay somewhere closer. So I found a place called Kinini-Pati, Knini, separate word, Paati. Now, Pati means island
Okay.
in their language. So that's why a few of them have the word Pati in them, because this is a small little island where I stayed on in the middle of the Suriname River. Okay. 1 hour away, 1 hour boat ride. I thought I could survive anything for 1 hour, right? Well, lo and behold, I get out on this boat, right? And I'm trying to set the scene for you. This Upper Suriname River is a wide, broad river. Jungle on both sides, right? Beautiful, pristine Amazon jungle on both sides of you, right? And the canoes have a motor on them. So you are going relatively fast, which means you get a nice breeze.
Yeah.
Which, believe me, in Suriname, a breeze is very welcome. We haven't talked about the weather there yet. But this place is near the equator, right? So it's hot. It's humid. Even for me, I live in Florida, so I'm used to hot. This was another layer of hot, right? So you get on the river, you're out there, right? You're in the middle of this beautiful river. You've got the Amazon jungle on both sides of you. You hear the chirping of the birds. You're getting the wonderful breeze that's like life-affirming breeze that's coming at your face, wind in your hair. And I was immediately in heaven. I was thinking to myself, damn, I wish I had gone to the place that was 3 hours away because I am loving this boat ride. Like this boat ride is absolutely epic. And it's also, the boatmen are so skilled. This river has some little rapids and some eddies and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are very skilled. They need to know every little inch of that river to be able to expertly pilot it in and out of these little rapids and these other things. And I'm telling you, you're going by all these little villages. There are something like 60 or 65 Maroon villages along this river. You are passing by these villages and you are seeing the village life go by. It is for somebody like me, a person who has a high level of curiosity. It was like rapture. I couldn't have been happier. I absolutely loved going by these places. And there's one thing that they warn you about too. They tell you, please do not photograph and video the villagers as we motor by their villages because they're often naked. So people use that river to bathe, to take their baths, and also to wash their dishes. And so as you're passing by these villages, there are people there getting clean, washing pots and pans. There are children playing and splashing each other, and village life is going by, and it is fascinating. Boy, is it interesting.
The way you described that reminds me of my experience in Borneo. Exactly the same. We're 3 hours on a boat into the middle of the rainforest to this camp, which is basically just a couple of wooden huts and that's it. And we're like, we have no idea where we're going, where we are. But when you get that rush of air on that boat, it does become really enjoyable. It sounds a bit strange, but I'm not really a boat person. I'm not like hugely into them, if you like. But when you sit on that boat with a life jacket on and just see where you're going in the distance, and that wind comes through your face and your hair,
Yeah.
there's something magical about that, I think.
Well, and I haven't been to Borneo, so offline we'll have to compare notes about that. 'Cause after I made this trip, I was thinking to myself, I just want to take more canoe trips like this on rivers because I loved it.
Yeah. And what was your plan for the 3 days there or 3 nights? What were you actually
Yeah,
going to see and do?
yeah, that's the cool thing is that, for me, I'm the kind of person I never take organized trips. Like I never, ever, ever take organized group trips. I just plan everything myself. But this is one of those places. It really does not lend itself to independent travel. They do not want you to just show up at these maroon villages without reservation or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the kind of place where you do go on a group trip. So they planned everything for us. They give you your meals, you pay a set price, and the price is very reasonable. And even, at Kinini Pati, the place where I stayed, I don't remember the exact price, but it is very reasonable for what you're getting because they're giving you entertainment, they're bringing you to villages, they're giving you food, and so it is very, very reasonable. And you know, they plan everything for you. So they're saying you get there and it's like, okay, you have an hour to relax. And then in an hour, we're going to take you on a guided hike through the jungle. And then 2 hours later, we're going to do this and that and the other thing. And so what they do is they take you to see some of the nearby villages on the boat. And they take you on some excursions and they take you to some bird watching, some jungle hikes. And it is fantastic because you learn about if you're like sort of a cultural anthropology type traveler as I am, where like you really want to see how do the people live.
Yeah.
This is it for you because they introduce you to people in the villages. For example, one of the little villages they took us to, we met a guy who makes these beautiful dugout boats, these wooden canoes. I love that. Just getting to ask this guy about life in this village and what is it like. You learn about the Maroon culture and how preserved it is. Now, that's another thing about the remoteness of this country and the remoteness of these villages. I should say, James, there's no other way to get to these villages. There are no roads leading to these villages.
Got it. Yeah.
That is why their culture has been so well preserved and why they still speak their languages. And when they preserve their traditions, for example, they are still polygamous. And you can learn all about that. Now, I have a book about, stories from around the Americas called Breakfast with Polygamists. So I am not a polygamist, but I find it very interesting. So when I travel to places where polygamy is practiced, you better believe I'm interested to hear all about that. And that's something that you can learn about when you're in Suriname.
What interest do they have? This is where it goes. I'm the same as you. I want to know what the people are like, what they eat, what do they speak, but also their interest, like day to day, I guess leisure interest. What do they do? Do they play football? Do they have their own games? Is it mostly just, I don't know, helping the village, building? Like what is their day to day life in a nutshell that you could see?
Their hobbies. You hit the nail on the head with football. So they were very proud to show me their football pitch in this one village.
Okay, love it. Yeah.
And they were telling me about Suriname's famous legacy of footballers. Is that, I'm not a huge soccer fan or football fan, as you folks call it, but they were telling me that there's been a lot of famous Surinamers. I think Ruud Gullit was the most famous of them.
Yes. Well,
but there were others
as
well.
Yeah.
Suriname has produced, given its small population, a lot of great footballers. And in these maroon villages, they love to play. And they very proudly told me that their village team in this one village that we visited called New Aurora, that their team from this little village of New Aurora beat one of the big teams in Paramaribo once. And this was sort of their claim to fame. So I think that in terms of hobbies and pastimes and things like this, I might disappoint you by telling you they're a lot like everybody else and that they like the same kind of things that we do. Soccer, other games. They like, believe it or not, they like watching soccer on their phones. They like watching YouTube on their phones. I'm going to disappoint you with that. No. So they're not like aliens. However, they do have cultural practices that are very unusual. Let's talk about a couple of those. So first of all,
Hmm.
they have very unique rules surrounding their polygamy, and they'll tell you all about those when you get there. But in a nutshell, some of them are that if you can marry as many women as you can support up and down the river, wherever the heck you like, but you are not supposed to sleep overnight in that village unless you were born there. So meaning that you can keep a wife in
Oh.
that village, right? But you got to give her her own hut and provide for her. You must provide equally to all of your wives. So if you have 7 wives, their houses that you build for them had better be equal, right? But
Hmm.
you are not supposed to sleep there, at least in the villages that I visited, unless you are from there. So you can come and visit your wife there, but not to stay overnight.
Hmm.
Also, menstruating women, when women are menstruating in these villages, in the traditional villages, I should stipulate that there are traditional villages and Christian villages up and down the
Okay.
Suriname River, right?
Yeah.
And so the vast majority of them are traditional villages, but 5 or 6 of them are Christian villages. So the missionaries did their best. Dutch missionaries tried to convert everybody up and down this river, but they only succeeded in maybe 10% of them. Okay.
Hmm.
And so in the Christian villages, there are churches there, and these rules do not apply. But in the traditional villages, the menstruating women are sent to a special house where they are to remain for the course of their menstruation period. And in the villages that I visited, I don't know if this is all of them, but they are pink houses. So it's a big, brightly painted pink house. And the
Hmm.
women are supposed to go there because if they come into contact while they're menstruating with others, they feel that they could take away their power. And it's bad luck in a sense, bad juju. So there's that. There's also lots of other interesting cultural practices too. And again, if you're interested in this kind of stuff, the second video that I did about my journey along the Upper Suriname River, I actually interviewed a young Saramaccan woman, and I asked her all of these questions where she sort of
Hmm.
explained polygamy. I was able to ask her, how do you feel? How would you feel? Now, in fact, her husband did not have more wives, but I asked her, how would you feel if he did that? And, you can see her response to that. And I thought it was really interesting to be able to ask young Surinamese women how they feel about polygamy. And they also have a specific dress that they wear. So you can see what this looks like. But this woman, because she was taken, because she does have a husband, she had on a specific sort of outfit. I'm going to call it almost like a cummerbund or a handkerchief type thing that she had
Hmm.
around her waist that had a phrase written in it in their language, in the Saramaccan language, that would stipify. So if she walks anywhere or travels to other villages along the river, other men would see her outfit and know, okay, I better not hit on her because she's taken. And so
Okay. Yeah.
in some aspects, the Saramakans are just like everybody else. They like football, they like YouTube, they like other stuff, but they have elements of their culture that are very well preserved, and they have retained those to these day. They also have very specific rites for a funeral. So in the other Saramaccan area I'm going to tell you about that I visited, we're going to talk about later on my last day of the trip, in Santigron, I met some women who were mourning because their uncle had just died. And
Hmm.
when someone dies in the Saramaccan culture, they have very unique celebrations as part of their funeral. And they told me that other people kind of make fun of us and say, "Oh, you guys are having parties when someone dies." They're known for that. So their funerals are a little different too.
You know what? I admire that because I understand the grieving process is going to have a few tears. I think we all would have that. But why not celebrate a life? Why not?
It's
I
interesting you
think,
should say that because I
yeah,
I like I like the idea. There's something about the phrase though that these days almost everyone calls a funeral a celebration of life in the US. I don't know if they do that in the UK or Canada, but
yeah, it's getting there. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
and for some reason I told my wife when I die, I do not want a celebration of life. I want a funeral because I've been to some celebrations of life and they don't feel like a damn celebration, I'll be honest with you. They feel like a
Okay.
funeral. So I kind
Right.
of just I like truth in advertising. So
Yeah.
unless my funeral is going to be like a really rollicking party, and hey, I wish that it would be, I would like it to be advertised properly.
Okay, that is on record, so we
I
can
don't
clip
want
that.
I don't want I don't want false advertising. People think they're going to come to a damn celebration, and then if people are crying because I'm dead, it's kind of like a fraud, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah. I hear what you're saying. Okay. And what are these people that you're visiting and
Was
meeting?
James, if I was
Yeah,
Sarah Mock, I'll make an addendum to that. If I die
yeah,
in
yeah.
Suriname and I get a Saramaccan funeral, go ahead and call it a celebration of life, because over there they are actually partying and celebrating.
Fair. Okay. Makes sense. Agreed. And were these people interested in your culture or where you're from? Did you get many questions back? Questions of life, how you live, why you're visiting, any of those?
Yes. Yes. In fact, it's interesting because Suriname, it's not a desperately poor country, but it is a developing country. And
Hmm.
I had many, many people in Suriname ask me, how do I get a visa to the United States, or do I have any chance to get a visa, or
Oh, wow.
how can I get to your country? How can I get to your country? And how much money could I possibly make if I did get there? I featured some of these people on videos too, and you do feel bad for them because they're such nice people. And the average wage there is something like $200 a month.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's what I think people were most curious about. How do I get to your country and how much could I make there? Other stuff, it's interesting. I spoke at a little school. One of the interesting things I did on this trip, I forgot to mention the Upper Suriname River trip. My guide, who, by the way, I want to call him by name, his name is Clydell.
Okay.
And I want to tell you that the best thing about staying at Kinini Padi is Clydell, the guide. This young man is a super smart guy, speaks 4 languages, awesome guide. Maybe the best guide I have ever had anywhere. He
Wow.
took me to a school. Boy, did I love visiting this school. I got to meet all of these really cute little children, and they asked me to make sort of like a little speech, which I felt very uncomfortable about doing. But I started it out by saying, I'm from Florida. That's one of the 50 states in America. And I asked a whole classroom full of children, what questions do you have about Florida and about my country, the United States? No hands went up whatsoever. There was complete silence. And I said, so then I thought, okay, how do I relate to these children? I said, I'm from where Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck are from. I don't live too far away from Disney World. Anybody heard of that place? And a few people started laughing. But I have to say that, like, I felt like America was so alien to them, they didn't even know what the hell to ask me. They were speechless.
Yeah, that's quite an interesting comment, that, because in a day and an age of technology, you think we are actually closer in terms of knowing each other, right? Because you can see it on YouTube or whatever.
Yes.
The fact they have no idea even what to ask you or what you are thinking, what to say. Yeah, it's quite an interesting. That's an
Well,
interesting situation. Yeah.
let me explain something. Well, I told you that people there are watching YouTube and football on their phones. That's not everybody, though, because
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
of all,
Yeah.
these villages at the moment only have electricity for a few hours each evening. So they do not have 24-hour-a-day electricity.
Hmm.
And the people I'm talking about who like to do that are the people who have more money, like my guides, for example.
Yeah.
They're making a decent salary at the hotel so they can stream internet on their phone. Most of the other people living in these villages don't even have phones, or if they have phones, they're like flip phones. So, and they've only got electricity a few hours a day. So, a lot of these kids, especially if they're from poorer families, they don't have computers, phones, or
Sure.
internet or anything like that in their homes. Now, they did tell me that they're soon supposed to be getting 24-hour-a-day electricity in these villages, which that's going to be a complete game changer, I think.
Yeah, that's huge. And how do people find the hotel that you stayed at and to maybe book Clyde as a guide? Like where do they go to book that?
Yeah, so you can book Kanini Padi. They have their own website. And so you can book directly with them and they will arrange the transportation for you and everything. There's also a bunch of tour companies there.
Hmm.
And any of them, if you tell them you want to go there, will book the excursion for you. I could name a few of them. There's one company called Jenny Tours. There's another one called SU for you, SU, like the abbreviation, Suriname for you. There's another one called Orange Travel. So those are 3 big tour companies right there. You can book with any of those. I also want to tell you where I stayed in Paramaribo
Yeah.
because I had such a warm welcome at this small family-run hotel that has maybe 15 rooms. It's called Villa Famiri, Famiri. There's a woman who runs this place named Lucy. My God, this woman could not do enough nice things for me. And first of all, I got there on a rainy night and I was very tired. Normally, I would want to immediately, I don't usually eat meals in a hotel, but I got there, I was tired, it was raining. It was like 8 p.m. I checked in and she said, would you like me to make you dinner? And I was like, I just stopped for a second. I thought, and it's just I didn't even know at the moment they had a restaurant or anything. It was like a very small little hotel. And I said, you can make me dinner? And she said, yeah, I would love to make you dinner. And I said, geez, I wanted to give her a hug and a kiss. I was so happy because it was pouring rain outside. And I said, yeah, I would love for you to make me dinner. And she did make me a delicious dinner for which they charged me like $8 or something like that. Normally, like,
Wow.
where else do you go? Where else do you get a meal at a restaurant for like less than $10?
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
woman couldn't do enough nice things for me. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
tell her you want something, she's making phone calls for you, she's making arrangements for you. Such hospitality.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's awesome. So that's a good recommendation for people to land. Well, they're going to land in
Yeah,
Paramaribo, right? So
yeah.
that's a good place to start.
Those are, honestly, there's a lot of things you can do in Suriname. The Maroon Village excursion, I did 3 days, 2 nights. I would love to do more of that. If you're like
Hmm.
me, I wanted another day or two of that. In fact, what I would have liked to have done was to have two excursions. Spend a couple days at Kanini Pati and then continue upriver to Don Pati, the other nice resort, a couple hours down. If I had to do it again, I'd want to go to both.
Good to know. So if I go, I'll book both of those. 100%.
Both of them.
Okay. What was your plan after leaving that region? I guess, are you working your way south, or are you going back up north or west, or where are you thinking after that?
See, that's the thing. In this country, you end up going back to the capital all the time because it's like all roads lead from there, right? And
Yeah.
all excursions start and end there. So they drove me back to the capital again. So you're
Yeah.
going to find yourself, it's kind of like playing Monopoly. I don't know if you know the game Monopoly,
I do.
where
Yeah.
you're constantly being sent back to go or whatever whatever the
Or
start of
back to
Monopoly
jail.
is, or back to prison, right? But I wouldn't call Paramaribo a prison now.
No, no.
So I went back and I actually didn't even have any plan. I didn't have any reservations. So then I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I was just sort of flailing about. But the next, so there were a couple more than excursions that I booked. So the next one was to go to Yoden Savannah, which I'm going to recommend. This is very interesting. This is the first completely autonomous Jewish community in the Americas, settled by Iberian Jews from
Oh.
Portugal in the 1600s. And they were
Hmm.
granted a tremendous degree of autonomy, and that's why they settled in this place. It is out in the middle of nowhere on the Suriname River, but in a different direction.
Hmm.
Oh my goodness, talk about jungle in this place. Like took some drone footage there. If you watch my Yoden Savannah vlog, you will get an idea for how utterly and completely remote this place was. Now, this place emptied out. It was a thriving Jewish community from the 1600s till about the 1830s, when some of the rights and privileges that the Jews enjoyed were revoked from them.
Hmm.
This community died and it was overtaken by the jungle, and then it was rediscovered, I think, like 70 or 100 years again later. So this is like the remains of a once thriving Jewish community, where you can see the remains of a once large synagogue, one of the earliest synagogues built in the Americas,
Hmm.
and also two big cemeteries, and in a spectacular setting. The only mistake that I made, I don't know if I could call it a mistake, but there's two ways to get there. You can take a boat ride there, which sounded much more exciting to me, so that's what I opted for, or you can go by road. I don't think I would take the boat excursion again. And I hope the very nice guy, I hope the very nice tour operator, who I'm not even going to name since I'm not recommending his tour, I hope he's not listening to this, because he was a wonderful guy, but he had the oldest, shittiest boat I've ever been on in my entire life. And I don't usually get seasick, at least very often. I didn't actually puke, but I felt a little sick. It was an extremely long boat ride, like let's say 2 hours on a very small boat in very choppy waters. And I had the worst seat on the boat on the way there. Like I was in the very front of the damn boat.
Hmm.
Oh man, that was not fun. So I would go to Yoden Savannah either on a very large boat if you can find one. If you can find a luxury boat. That's always the problems with some excursions, is you don't know what you're getting yourself involved in,
Indeed.
James. You ever had that
Yeah,
problem?
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. I've been on many a
You
bus
book,
and a
you,
boat.
yeah. You
Yeah,
book something, right? And then you show up at the port at where the boat is to pick you up, and you're like, oh shit, that's the boat? Oh, damn it.
yeah.
And that was kind of my experience with Yoden Savannah. Interesting place to go to. I do not like how I was forced to get there and back at all.
Was that an overnight excursion, or did you go for a day trip and
No,
back?
day trip. Again, a day trip.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a million day trips you can take from the capital in this country.
I was then going to ask, like, there must be, because you mentioned earlier about this as the place where you just do day trips potentially. There must be loads of options to go and see and do, right? I guess it depends what you're looking for.
I told you the names of those three tour companies. Go on their websites and you'll see a menu of day trips. There's tons of them.
Yeah. And after that day trip there, where else did you plan to go to after that?
Yeah, so then after that, the other thing I wanted to do was go to the Comahuina district. And this is named after one of the other beautiful rivers of Suriname, the Comahuina River. And I wanted to see one of the historic plantations.
Hmm.
And really the nicest one that's still around that's been turned into a boutique hotel is Frederiksdorp. So that was the next day trip that I did. And this by this point in the trip, I didn't want to keep doing group trips, so I did this one independently. And I really enjoyed my day in Frederiksdorp. I went to a place called Pepperpot Nature Park, and I took a lovely hike. That was really, really nice. And then the interesting thing about this Frederiksdorp plantation is it's on a side of the river where there are no roads. And so you cannot drive right to this Frederiksdorp plantation. You've got to go to the other side of the river and then find a boatman to take you across. And I don't know why this seemed very intimidating to me. I was thinking, well, how do I find this boatman? And how is this going to work out? And I was looking online. You know, when you've never been to a country before and you don't know what to expect, and you're like trying to find like a timetable online. Like I'm sitting here in Florida weeks before the trip, like, damn it, I can't find a timetable for how to get across this river. Like, how the frig am I going to get to this place, you know? Then you just go there, and there's a guy just sitting right there, just waiting for you to take you across. And the price is like $5, and you're like, damn, what was I all worried about? And it takes 15 minutes, and it's really fun too, because the guy, is really cool. Actually, the boatman, this guy's name was Albert. And I actually featured him in my video because he was such a nice and interesting guy. And because he grew up, in this Frederiksdorp area, he grew up having to take a boat back and forth to go to school because there's no schools on this side of the river where the plantation is. And so not only do you get a cheap boat ride across to the other side, but the guy who's taking you can tell you what it was like to commute to school as a child on a boat. And I loved it. And this is, by the way, a very upscale hotel. So if you don't mind splashing out, and by the way, splashing out in Suriname might mean $100 or $150 a night or euros per night. So when I say it's upscale and expensive, it is upscale and expensive by Suriname standards, but by American standards, you could pay more for a Holiday Inn here in this country at this point. Yeah. So you want to stay in kind of a luxury place, and particularly if you like to stay in a place where there are no roads. So cycling is really big in that area because you can ride around on your bike and there's no cars that will knock you over. So they've got a real nice pool. They have a history tour at this plantation, which I went on, where they'll tell you about the sad history of this place. And again, this is a wonderful place if you have a drone to fly a drone because it's jungle around there. I mean, it's straight up jungle outside this plantation.
No restrictions.
And that's another day trip. I did that as a day trip, but you could also stay overnight there at the hotel.
What's the most interesting thing you learned on that trip, do you think, about the plantation?
Well, I guess the most interesting thing that I learned I hadn't reeled about was the history of how the Maroons, what they did and how they escaped and the wars that were fought. So what happened was, the Maroons, the enslaved people who escaped these plantations, they did not, the slave owners, the plantation owners, they didn't just say, oops, well, there you go. I guess we won't be getting that person back again. They went on raids to try to recapture these poor people. And there were several wars fought between the Maroons and these plantation owners. I mean, it was outright warfare. So I guess the level of depravity and the level of cruelty, I mean, of course, you know that slavery was a cruel and awful thing. But learning the details of these wars and skirmishes that were fought of these people and how determined they were to get their enslaved people back again and the sadism involved. Also, there was a guerrilla war campaign that was fought in the 1980s into the 90s for 6 or 7 years between the Maroons and the government, too. And so learning the history of the Maroon people was really interesting.
Yeah, I think the highlight of my El Salvador trip was the Civil War tour I did. And I got to speak to
I heard you talking about that on the show.
Yeah, Nelson. I think he's been shot 7 times or something. He's got like some marks and stuff. I think I mentioned on the podcast that I was with a G Adventures tour. So I was a little bit, I think annoyed is a bit strong, but I knew that these youngsters weren't going to be interested in this guy that much. They just want to go for a hike, go jump in the waterfall, right? A few of them had a few questions, but I had probably 100 questions I could ask this guy. I know what to sit there all day and speak to him, right? But you get like half an hour. But super interesting about hearing that side of the things, why they're doing it, the troubles they went through. And it's quite harrowing that I guess after a while they fight. There's a conclusion, and I guess in El Salvador's case, they have then the gangs come in, which is like an extension of it, really. So super interesting. I think when you get to hear those stories, it kind of gives you a sense of the people on the ground, real life scenarios, not just the news bulletins you might hear or a throwaway article, right? You get to hear from the horse's mouth what really went on and why they're fighting as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious too, James. How do you enjoy being on a group tour? Do you mind it?
Not a fan, no. I had no choice with that guy. Like, if you want to go speak to like a Civil War guy, you got to go on this tour. That's the thing, right? So I was happy to do that one, but I didn't know I was joining the G Adventures tour. I thought I was joining just a collection of individuals that come together with this tour company, but I was attached onto a G Adventures thing, which is maybe a bit unlucky. Maybe another time, if you went to go and do it, it might just be 4 or 5 of you just coming together to do this tour, right? So just the luck.
G Adventures is very well known, and I know they're very highly regarded. I think their prices are high, though, aren't they? Or am I wrong?
No, I think they're quite high. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never done one, but I don't think I would do a G Adventures tour for like 8 days. But these guys were. It's interesting, right? You walk up and you do the hike with them afterwards, and they're asking you like, "Is traveling around El Salvador safe?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. I just get on local buses, local hotels." But they're doing the same thing, but in a tour bus, right? They're kind of been taken around and told where to go and what to do. I think it's a different vibe and a different conversation.
I'm also fascinated by the timing of your El Salvador journey too, because you were there right before the place became internationally famous. I mean, everybody's been talking about El Salvador here in my country for the last, I don't know, month or two, and a lot of people are so upset at Bukele in this country. But then it's interesting because you talk to all these YouTubers, and all the YouTubers are like, man, Bukele has made this country safe. We can travel here now. Whereas before him, it was like literally the murder capital of the world. So it's really interesting. And I don't like to delve into, not going to delve into politics, but I think from a travel perspective, a lot of travelers are really, I don't know if admire is the right word for Bukele, but at least respect what Bukele has done in terms of restoring order to this country. And, it's a place where it used to be too dangerous to travel there unless you really had a screw loose. 10 years ago, you weren't going.
Yes.
You weren't going to El Salvador. And it's interesting. You watch YouTubers like yourself and also like Timmy Carter, for example. I don't know if you've ever seen any of Timmy Carter's videos, but like the changes in this country, because Timmy Carter went there back when it was super dangerous. And then he went there, again, recently. And it's crazy. You've got like, he interviewed women, and I know you spoke to people who are the same, who were saying, like, for example, like he interviewed women who were just selling pupusas on the street and who were saying that when MS-13 was running the country, every night at the end of their shift, they would come to take their tribute. It was that they'd have to pay basically a percentage of whatever they took that day to these gangsters. And you're thinking, wow, when I was watching that, I was thinking to myself, I don't think the average person understands how utterly pervasive that country was in terms and how these gangsters were terrorizing the country. And it wasn't just the murders too, which were the murders and the drug selling was bad enough. But how about just a poor woman on the street trying to like make a crumb selling pupusas, that even people like that they were extorting money from. I mean, and now they're not anymore. I mean, anyways, I don't think the episode's about El Salvador, so we probably shouldn't get too far afield. But I have not been to El Salvador yet, so you're gonna have to help me when I go there.
Oh, I think you'll love it.
And you already have with all of your videos, with all of the great videos you've made in podcasts.
Yeah, and the final thing to say on that is if you ask the average person on the street, you can't have it all. Okay, but Bukele is called a national, I think it's like emergency, he's bypassed the courts, he's in prison, 50,000, whatever. But if you speak to the average person, they're like, we couldn't walk down the street without fear of getting shot. And he's come in and he's made it completely safe. Arguably, some travellers and locals say it's now the safest place in Latin America, which is a huge claim. And I had no problems whatsoever walking at night, during the day, any city or town, totally fine. I know I'm a white guy, but I got the impression from other travellers who look different to me that it's completely, and even other Latin Americans, completely safe. They couldn't believe it. So, he may be controversial in that sense, but you can't have it all. I don't know.
No, I mean,
what's the trade-off?
It's such a trade-off. When I hear about the human rights organizations' complaints, I hear them. I wish that human rights were well respected everywhere. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But what I think about is, what is a basic human right? I also think that the average person being able to walk to the store or to go to school without fear they're going to get killed, I think that's also a human right too. Yeah. And I think that that's a basic human right. And until you get to that base level, there's this Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Until you have that basic level of safety and order in the country where you feel safe going to the hospital or to the store or to school and things like that, then you've got to sort of take drastic action against these gangs. And I think that, unfortunately, if Amnesty International, whom, again, I respect the work that they do, but if you put Amnesty International in charge of running that country, would it be safe today, or would it still be dangerous? Would it still be controlled by gangs? I'm sorry, but my prediction is that if Amnesty International was running the country instead of a
Yeah.
tough guy like Bukele, I think that MS-13 would still be terrorizing the country, unfortunately. So it's like, I don't know how you strike that balance between
Mm.
respecting human rights and restoring order. But I just wish that everyone would understand the need of the average person to be able to live their life in a degree of safety. And I think that that to me is the most important human right there is.
Yeah, and that pupusa lady you mentioned, she would still be there now, but you can now walk there and buy a pupusa off her, have a chat.
Yes.
There's no threat of violence. There's a guy talking to me about football in the street, giving me a drink. It really is a complete U-haul or U-change, if you like. It's gone U-shaped, it's like gone the other way, where now they can just walk freely and not worry about these sort of things. And you can't
Right.
underestimate how powerful that is.
Correct. And now, so I'll bring us back to Suriname here. So you might be wondering,
Yeah,
we're talking about safety and we're talking about safety. So is Suriname safe? We haven't talked about that yet.
yeah.
I felt very comfortable in this country. I did not feel in danger at all. And I think maybe this is a good segue to talk about the last thing that I did in the country
Yes,
on
please.
literally on my way to the airport. So I'm sure you've had experiences like this before. Now, this is a very weird country in a sense because the airport is an hour and a half to an hour and 45 minutes away from the capital city. It is kind of in the middle of nowhere. Why did they do that? I don't know. I asked a few people and I could not get a straight answer. But anyways, I had a rental car for the last few days of the trip, which I really enjoyed motoring around. And I thought to myself, I'd like to have one last adventure because my flight was late in the day. It was maybe like a 6 o'clock flight or something like that. And I thought, what could I find that's somewhere en route to this, remote airport? And I looked at my guidebook again and I saw, oh, there's a Maroon village. Okay. And I love the Maroons villages along the Upper Suriname River. There's also Maroon villages spread out in other parts of the country. And this is a remote Maroon village that the guidebook said was very beautiful, but it warned you don't go there alone. I started talking about this at the beginning of the episode, but I didn't finish. So the Brat Guide says don't go there alone without a guide because you will likely receive a frosty welcome from the locals. I saw that warning, but I thought, I still want to go. I'm still curious, right? And so I Googled, the name of this village is called Santigron, Santigron. So I'm sitting there on my phone, literally in a rental car, Googling Santigron tour guide. And a guy comes up named Kenneth Lazo. I see a LinkedIn profile of all things for a guy named Kenneth Lazo who describes himself as a Santigron tour guide. I thought, bingo, here we go. So I messaged this guy, right? And I said, I am heading to your village right now. And would love to have a tour with you. And I screenshotted this guy's profile photo from LinkedIn because I thought to myself, if I really get into hot water, if the villagers in Santigron are really as hostile as the Brat Guide thinks that they are, I will simply show them a picture of Kenneth on my phone and say, I'm looking for Kenneth. Can you please bring me to Kenneth? Kenneth was like my safety valve. Well, I'm heading out to this village and getting deeper and deeper and deeper into the countryside, deep into the jungle, where I'm getting to the point where my phone is not working anymore. My Google Maps directions are still working, but I have this fear that I'm going to get horribly lost because I have no cell signal. I probably drove 15 or 20 minutes where I did not pass a single vehicle heading towards this village. I arrive on the exterior of the village, right on the outskirts of the village, and I see three beautiful young women sitting on what appears to be a bus stop shelter, and they're wearing very distinctive headgear. I want to call them hats, but they are really not like hats. Again,
Okay.
if you want a visual, go to the video on my YouTube channel that says, I was warned to avoid this village, and look at the women I'm talking about. I looked at these three beautiful women in these white sort of headscarf type things. It turned out what they were wearing was a mourning outfit. They were in mourning because their uncle had just died, and they were waiting for a ride to get into the capital to purchase supplies for his celebration of life. And I thought to myself, I'm always like this, especially with my vlogging and my YouTube, I really like to feature local people, but I was feeling very nervous. I was very nervous, like my heart was pounding heading into this village because of this warning from the guidebook that the locals are not nice here, right? But I thought to myself, I can't help myself. I rolled the window down and I introduced myself and I started asking them questions. And then I got out of the car and I wanted to film them so badly. So I asked them, hey, would you mind if I just ask you some questions about your village for my video? And the spokesperson, who was the youngest of the three, there were three sisters, said, no, we don't want to be on the village. And I thought, oh, shoot, we don't want to be in there, shoot. But then I continued talking to them. And then she changed her mind.
Okay.
She said, actually, I think I would like to be on your video, she said, because I would like to go to the US. And you never know, maybe some guy will see me in the video and will want to contact me. I'm paraphrasing, something like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, isn't this great? So a minute or two before, I'm a white guy who's not supposed to be here, approaching this Maroon village without a guide, and my heart is pounding and I'm really nervous. 2 minutes later, I'm sitting in a bus stop shelter with three sisters who are telling me about what type of guy they would love to marry and why they would like to come move to the US and meet an American guy there. And I'm thinking, if this isn't an example of why I love travel, the serendipity of travel, the serendipitous adventures. And so I talked to these ladies for maybe 15, 20 minutes. I just loved them. They were so sweet. They were so interesting. They told me all about the difficulties of life there.
Mm-hmm.
Two of them worked as hairdressers. They were telling me how little money you make as a hairdresser in Suriname. The third one was a house cleaner. She was telling me what a difficult life it is. I was fascinated by everything about them. Unfortunately, then somebody came to pick them up to bring them into the capital, so they had to leave. And I thought, okay, we're off to a good start. There's at least three sisters in this village who were really nice to me.
Yeah.
So then I proceed into the village. And again, I'm asking around for Kenneth. And I find these little kids who are playing music on improvised instruments, like tin drums and like paint cans and things like that. So I love these little kids. I made friends with these little kids, and then I bought them some snacks. And in the store, they said, okay, here's an outsider. They said, you should meet so-and-so. You should meet this guy. Wasn't Kenneth Lazo, some other guy. Because I thought, okay, great. So they bring me over to some other guy's house, right? As it turns out, this guy worked for the United Nations for 20 years. And he worked in development for the United Nations for 20 years and had just decided to come back to his native village, Santigran, where he grew up and was born.
Wow.
To retire there.
Yeah.
And he said he would be happy to show me around the village. So then I get this tour from this guy, very smart guy who had grown up there. He showed me all around the village. He introduced me to people, told me all about the culture. And then afterwards, we went to his parents' house. His parents run a makeshift village bar where the locals hang out and drink beer basically on their porch. That's the makeshift.
Fair.
This is the makeshift pub in Santigran. So I said, I'm buying drinks for everybody here. And I bought some nice big Parbo beers. You asked me, I think, if there's any good beers there. There is a local beer. The national beer there is called Parbo, P-A-R-B-O. Believe me, on a sweltering hot day, this beer tastes delicious. So I bought a couple of huge beers and got to meet all the local guys. And everybody could not have been more welcoming and nice to me. And I was thinking to myself, I almost did not come to this place out of fear. And if I did not have a flight to catch, I would have stayed there even longer. I stayed there for several hours, and it was absolutely one of the highlights of my trip. I loved it.
And that kind of brings me to, I think in your article you do allude to this, maybe towards the end, that maybe the best part of this country is the people. By the sounds of it, you've met at the start of your trip, when you first arrived into the country, the lady at the hotel, then you went on to the village tour along the river, and to the end of the trip, it just seems constant welcoming, hospitality, and just also curiosity from them as well, maybe to speak to you and get to know you.
Absolutely. And I find that is true in many circumstances, that the fewer tourists there are in a place, the more welcome you will be. And there aren't that many tourists there, so you're pretty welcome to go.
Okay. And to finish on Suriname, is there anything else you want to mention before we wrap up?
No, I will also say, too, if you're planning a trip there, if I was going to go again and I had a good budget to do this, there are a couple of fly-in resorts. So look at my list here. So if you've got the budget, I heard from people while I was staying there, there's a place, for example, called Cabo Lebo Nature Resort. That is spelled K-A-B-A-L-E-B-O. You can go to these fly-in, when I call them fly-in resorts, it means there's no road leading there. And you can, if you want to get really deep into the jungle in Suriname and you have a little bit of a budget, I don't think it's extravagantly, insanely expensive, but it's not dirt cheap either. Look into a fly-in resort in Suriname to really disconnect if you want to get way off the grid. this is a neat country where you can do that.
That's awesome. So to finish the episode, I just want to ask you, what have you got planned for this year? Any more travels? I know you mentioned maybe at the start of the episode, all pre-recorded, you plan your summer trip. Anything for work as well?
Yes. Well, for me, travel is always work, although I don't consider it work. It's not like my wife often says I ought to get a real job because what I do is not really work. But everywhere I go, I try to make a crumb or two out of it by writing articles, by making my videos on YouTube, for which I make a small amount of money, and so on. So yeah, work and travel are inextricably linked. Next destination I'm planning right now is a big family trip. This time I'm bringing the whole family, and we are spending 3 weeks in South Africa, and I'm hoping to try to figure out how to sneak in visits to Lesotho and Swaziland, now called Eswatini, as well. So that's the next big adventure.
Yeah,
what about
if
you?
You're listening, well, I was going to say, if you're listening now and you heard that, Dave might need some help about how to get to those places from South Africa. So if you've got any advice, that'd be quite cool to maybe send a DM to me or an email or to Dave.
How are your listenership numbers in Lesotho?
Low. South Africa's not that bad.
Okay. So, but like, I think if you look at your analytics, you should be able to tell. Do you have any listeners? Have you ever had a listener from either Swaziland or Lesotho? Do you know?
No, I don't think I have.
Not a single download?
I don't check religiously, but I don't think so.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. When I go to those countries, the little countries this year, do you have a banner or anything I could distribute? I want to try to promote your show in those countries because I love your show.
I can send you some stickers if you like.
Won't that be a popular gift? I'm going to hand that out to the children of Lesotho.
Absolutely.
If anybody who wants candy or money from me, no, but I'm going to give you a Winging It Travel podcast sticker instead.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I've got loads of them. Yeah, I'll send you some of them. You can take them with you.
All right, I will do that.
Dave, thanks for coming on again. You're always welcome back. So I think we'll book in another session for your trip there because I want to hear basically the logistics of how you get from Africa to those two countries, right? So I want to see how that goes, and we'll check back in later in the year.
I'd like to find out how that goes too.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, James.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye-bye.